With so much talk these days about the quarterback position, especially in this offseason where it seems like almost every quarterback is available for trade or at least looking for a trade, it has Browns fans looking at our own backyard, looking at our own quarterback, looking at Baker Mayfield. And while Baker Mayfield's not on the trading block at all, one of the things we do have to talk about and do have to have a conversation about is just how good Baker Mayfield is. Where is he at on that scale? Is he top 10, top 15, top 5? Like, where is Baker Mayfield at? How good is he? We know you can win 11 games with him. You know you can almost get to the conference championship game with him. But how much further, how much more room for growth is there? Well, let's talk about it. But before we talk about that, I want to make sure, one, that you're subscribed. And if you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and ding that notification bell so you don't miss out on anything. A ton of off-season content coming. It's February. Once March hit, we're going to be talking about free agency, the draft, all of these things, a ton of things to get into in this pivotal all season for the Cleveland Browns. So if you want some content, please make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ding that notification bell. Also, I want to give a shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. And as always, they start with Michael Matique, Rob Farron, Kyle Stouffer, Lukey from Munich, David Roth, J Guy 101, Musty Taco, Joe Bobby, Keith Gerkak, Brad Calbo, Daylon W, James McGinty, Arenda Hall, Rex Kaufman, Chad Gimme, David Molinado, Andrew Sadejo, Dylan Hill, Josh Mendor, Eric Green, Jaleel Salim Jr., Martha Krusna, Mark M, TJ Showman, Stuart Moore, Bobo Regretti, Anthony O, David Arndt, Robert Jermaine Jr., Dave Mike May, John Cummings, Andrew Hirsch, Hundo Magnifico, Curtis Bayer, Batman, Rush Sharir, Barack Kumar, John Alver, Beerman 069, Masayua, Buds of Roland, James Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Philip Wilcoxon, Marie Vivert, CK, Keith Anderson, Sean Barron, Gagos Pisano, Dom Guzzulo, Nick Nasty, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Anthony Latham, Christian, Matt Bond, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Soul Train, Charles Work, Billy, Michael Holden Acton, Moose Gentry, Patrick F. Austin Z, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, IT Rex, Greg Ehlers, Austin Bolin, Jesus Serrano, Chris Phones, Picktown Brown Backers, Mark Kahn, Max Out Dojo, and Water Bear Marketing. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me through the offseason. I hope you aren't disappointed with the content to come. Now, let's talk about Baker Mayfield. Okay, so Baker Mayfield is one of those QBs, and there's a handful of QBs who I feel like just aren't given any benefit of the doubt in most conversations about him. You know, guys like Lamar Jackson is somebody else who I would also put in this conversation, or where a lot of benefit of the doubt when most people are talking about them is not given, right? There's always these assumptions or caps put on them that are seemingly arbitrary. They aren't put on other quarterbacks, and it's mainly because a lot of the times with quarterbacks who are controversial or polarizing or whatever, we tend to focus on what they can't do instead of focusing on what they can do and how important what they can do is to winning football games. And with Baker Mayfield, there's a lot of things that he is good at and he excels at that makes him, that really elevates how you can look at a dude like Baker Mayfield. And the first thing I'm going to talk about with Baker Mayfield is his ability to close football games. This is kind of a non-spoken about thing, even among Brown circles, right? People don't talk about how good he is at closing games. In his career, he has had 6 fourth quarter comebacks, 7 game-winning drives, which is significant. It's a good amount for a lot of quarterbacks. I think Deshaun Watson, who's played a couple of years more than Baker Mayfield, at least a year longer than Baker Mayfield, has about a similar number, I think a little bit above that, and people consider Deshaun a top 5 quarterback. Also, when you talk about Baker Mayfield, his ability to finish, how does he finish halves? That's very important, right? Finishing halves are normally, in a lot of the times, the difference from winning and losing games, right? If you're a team that deferred on the kickoff, if you can score before halftime, that is obviously a boost to you winning, and obviously scoring before the end of the second half, which is the end of the game, is very important. So how does Baker fare in those situations? If I'm going to deem him a closer, how did he do in 2020? Well, he got 1,842 of his passing yards in the second and fourth quarter. And he had 22 of his touchdowns, only 3 of his interceptions in those 2 quarters, which tells you Baker is a closer. That's where he does his best work, when the time scrunches down, when he has to score real quick, when he goes into that no huddle. Baker is actually really, really good at that. And then there's his red zone efficiency. And this is an important one, right? Because you'll see guys who stat pad. They put up a ton of stats, but the win column isn't what you would normally see behind a quarterback with that number of stats. And there are a number of things that factor into this, right? You can have good red zone efficiency and also not win a ton of games. Deshaun Watson is an example of that. But you can also put up a ton of numbers and not have good red zone efficiency, and that be an issue, right? Matthew Stafford, somebody who has been that throughout his career, not really that spectacular in the red zone. Baker Mayfield, he's actually really good in the red zone. 22 touchdowns and no interceptions in the red zone this year. In his career, he is responsible for 60 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. The big note being that all 3 of those interceptions happened during Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken's wrangle year with the offense. We all know that was really weird. You had a tip ball interception, which I normally tend to count, but the tip ball interception that happened with Antonio Callaway that year was like completely on Antonio Callaway. There was no way you could have blamed that on the quarterback. But nonetheless, that is the situation with Baker Mayfield. He's a good red zone quarterback. He's a good closer in both first half and second half situations. He's a guy who can be clutch. He's also physically talented, right? He has a really strong arm. He's athletic, so he can flip his hips and do the play action boot stuff. Even if they have an end waiting for him, he's athletic enough to get out and get a pass out at the very least. He's a lot harder to sack than many people would assume. And when he is accurate downfield, when he puts a ball on target, he can fit it through almost any window. The issue with Baker Mayfield, and yes, we're going to talk about issues with Baker Mayfield, is sometimes there isn't that same consistency with the ball placement, right? I think throughout the years, we've seen this get a lot better, especially at the end of 2020. But for the bulk of Baker Mayfield's career, it's either he is on target and amazing and just putting balls in windows that you had never seen, or off target, misfiring, missing high. It tended to be very streaky with Baker Mayfield. And even in 2020, where a lot of the stuff got better towards the tail end of the season, a lot of the bad stuff that happened at the beginning of the season and in parts during the tail end of the season still crept in there. And I do think his completion percentage, while I don't really care for completion percentage as an overall stat, I do think it is reflective of a couple of advanced stats that aren't really pointing in a favorable direction for Baker Mayfield. One is his on-target pass percentage for the entire season. The other one is his bad throw. And the other one is his bad throw percentage. His bad throw percentage was in the top 10 of the league, which you don't want. His on-target throw was not in the top 10 of the league. I believe it was in the bottom third of the league. These are significant things for Baker to improve on. And what that is not his accuracy. I think he can be accurate. He has it in him to be very accurate. It's his consistency with that accuracy. And we saw as the pocket protections got better, as he got more comfortable with his footwork, that those things did get better towards the end of the season. We just need to see Baker Mayfield do that for a whole year to feel really confident in it. Because again, that's one of the things when you talk about what has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride with Baker Mayfield has been the inconsistency when it comes to being accurate. I think that's the biggest and most valid criticism of Baker Mayfield. Yes, you can say that, he has those on-target throws, but also, the completion percentage and things like that are affected because he doesn't really take a lot of short completions, which is true. He has the highest intended yards of completion than any quarterback in the NFL. At least he's in the top 5 in that category. So he's always going downfield, and that does affect completion percentage, but it's also the advanced stats that factor into that actually indicating a issue with Baker Mayfield. And again, there are valid criticisms of Baker Mayfield. He's not a perfect quarterback. Some of the criticisms that I tend to think are kind of junk criticisms about Baker Mayfield is when they try to attribute Baker Mayfield and all of his success to the pieces around him, which is odd because for good reason, we don't do this for many other quarterbacks in the NFL. We don't contribute Patrick Mahomes' success to his great supporting cast because we know he has a great supporting cast. He gets the most out of his supporting cast. I don't think a quarterback should be penalized for having a great supporting cast around him, nor do I think not having a great supporting cast around a quarterback, with some reasonable exceptions, right? Like if you have all-time awful offensive line play, or like you're running out there and you have literal practice squad receivers like that's an issue that's going to affect quarterback play. But if you have league average wide receivers and league average offensive line play, then your supporting cast shouldn't be something that is held against you, nor is it something that should prop you up because you have a lack of support around you, right? I'm not in favor of any of those arguments. Main reason being is that there's no correlation between a great supporting cast being around just any quarterback and better quarterback play from any quarterback. You look at teams like Washington, Pittsburgh, Arizona, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Detroit Lions. All teams that at one point in the season, quarterback play was an issue. Turnovers with Arizona, Pittsburgh, obviously Big Ben at the end of the season. The Colts, turnovers with Phillip Rivers at certain points. The Lions had a stagnant offense all year. And all of these things were kind of just blamed on the offensive line. Well, what if I told you? All of these things, probably minus Washington, were blamed on the offensive line. And I don't think that's fair because if you look at their PFF grades, these were all teams in the top 10 with pass blocking offensive line. Oh, by the way, another team with a top 10 pass blocking offensive line, the Houston Texans, who had blamed or scapegoated that offensive line for Deshaun Watson not winning a ton of games this year. Help is not a reason to dock or elevate a quarterback status is my point, right? If they're playing at a top 10 level with whatever help they have around them, they're playing at a top 10 level. If they aren't playing at a top 10 level without help around them, then they're not playing at a top 10 level. It's a very cut or dry league. We can try to add fantasy points to what people are or aren't doing without help. And if we wanted to do that, Baker Mayfield should actually get elevated because of the lack of wide receiving help that he had all season. When Odell went down, the wide receiving play also went down. He was throwing to Jarvis Landry, who was injured most of the season, did not put up Jarvis Landry type numbers until the end of the season. And Rashard Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who a lot of people are elevating right now because of how well they played with Baker Mayfield. But I would ask you, who have these dudes ever been without Baker Mayfield? Maybe that's a sign of Baker elevating somebody. Maybe it's not. But what we're not going to say is that Baker had all of this wide receiving support around him. That's just functionally not true. These wide receivers had some of the lowest yak averages in the NFL. You know, there are teams like the Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers who had the highest. Their quarterbacks obviously benefited from that because yak yards count for quarterbacks too. But Baker, he was not getting a ton of benefit from yak after Odell went down, especially. And yet, Baker still found a way to finish in the top 10 with QBR and have his second top 10 Pro Football Focus grade finish in 3 years, which tells me that Baker Mayfield is a top 10 quarterback. That's where I'm at with Baker Mayfield. I am expecting in 2021, whether this is fair or not to some Browns fans, him to play at least a top 10 level because that's what he showed he's capable of. Once he gets more pieces back around him offensively, he should maintain that level of play. But that's my thoughts on where Baker Mayfield is at and where he should continue to go. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.